my tendency is to have a gap on the underside of my fingers. Not going to be ideal for my ability to reach the front left side of the chassis. You can see here that I have a hard line of pressure all the way across the top. Is this how you set up your rifle? If so, you could be wrong. Starting at the back end, you have your length of pull, which is from the trigger to the back. For a positional style shot, having a length of pull this long means while it may be comfortable for my reach to the grip and to the trigger, it's not going to be ideal for my ability to reach the front left side of the chassis with my support hand. You can see my left shoulder is pushed all the way forward. Instead, I'm going to collapse this and bring this all the way in. And I'm not looking through the scope at the moment. I'm simply going to get level with the rifle, close my eyes, place my hand on the grip, bring my head down and find a place that this feels comfortable. I'm not stretching on my left arm. I can reach the front side. And if I were to place a bag here, I would be reaching at approximately the front edge of a bag or the front side of my tripod to simply be able to grip it and stay consistent on the controls or the left side of the rifle. 2, cheek piece. I see a lot of people set their cheek piece up to almost as high as it can go or very close to as high as it can go. This is too high. If I were to set my cheek on this system and I look through the optic, in order to see through the optic, you can see here that I have a hard line of pressure all the way across the top. Now, granted, when I do this, I'm making firm contact with my face, but in order to get to the gun, I have to press down with my head in order to get low enough to see through my optic. And the tendency, if I relax, is for my head to come up or my cheek to press back down, and I'm looking above the optic ever so slightly, or it's causing an optical kind of blackout, poor eye image. So instead, I'm gonna drop this down, and I'm gonna start with this as low as possible. And now, if I just lower my head, I'm in the perfect position, and I just barely feel it along the bottom part of my jaw. If I start to apply too much cheek pressure to the rifle in order to stabilize and get behind the optic, it's making the rifle system want to go up and left at the muzzle. When you break a shot, especially from positions on a tripod or from a bag, you're gonna see that your reticle tends to go left and high. And that's not actually a really good thing. We would preferably want to have our reticle stay dead solid, centered on the target. And one easy way to help minimize the amount of pressure you exert low and to the right is to simply drop our cheek pressure here and just use what's called a jaw weld, which is a very soft reference on the low right side of your jawline. Factory rifles, especially factory hunting rifles, tend not to have a lot of adjustability around length of pull, cheek height, and or your grip and grip ergonomics. But there are still ways you can customize even a factory rifle or factory stock to make it fit you just a little bit better. So if I were to center this up and try to get into my optic, I may actually find that the cheek height is a little bit too low to give me any sort of support. So one of the things that you can do is simply take a small piece of foam, either out of a package from something or even cardboard, something similar, and you can cut it with some small notches to place it over an area that you might put your cheek to check to see if this would allow you to have better eye relief and or better eye positioning vertically and a good cheek weld. If you have this scope set up too far rearward while you're standing, when you drop into a kneeling position, suddenly you're very close to the optic and you go right back to that vignette. Rather than adjust my length of pull, I'd rather move the optic that little 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, just to get it set up and give me the shortest length of pull possible while also being able to get square behind the rifle. We're gonna start very, very far away, back here, and I'm just gonna look for the little pinhole that starts up on the optic. And I'm just gonna slowly bring my head in to the side of the rifle. That pinhole is growing, and as soon as it stops, that's where I wanna stop my jaw weld. And I'm coming in as level and vertical on the rifle from like a tripod as I can. I'm at the limit where as long as I keep my head in the same spot, I have a completely clean, clear sight picture. So this marks the rearmost position of the optic and my eye relief. Next, I'm gonna look at my trigger hand and trigger grip. I'm not trying to create a death grip on the rifle and really control it from this angle. I wanna make sure that my trigger finger can remain, the tip, can remain 90 degrees to the trigger shoe. You notice I have 3 fingers on the front of the grip. If I were to close my eyes and just touch the trigger and figure out where my hand is naturally, my natural angle of my hand, this is about how it wants to be. I'm just gonna bring the hand in and see if I feel like there's a gap. I can feel that I want to roll my hand down in order to contact the grip. So that means that I would want to loosen these 2 screws and pitch the trigger slightly forward so that I can maintain a more natural positive angle on the grip so that I don't have contact just at the top or just at the bottom. I want it to be distributed along both surfaces evenly. If I'm shooting offhand, this feels fairly comfortable. But if I were to be kneeling and try to take a more precise shot, my tendency is to have a gap on the underside of my fingers. And that small gap underneath my fingers while I'm taking up a position on the trigger means that I'm not going to have great positive control over the rifle. I can certainly grip it and press on the trigger, but you'll see my trigger finger is no longer in the right angle. It's not 90 degrees to the trigger shoe. I would need to slide the entire grip forward in order to accommodate that. With a little bit of tape and a little bit of foam, while it may not look pretty, you can actually make some fairly good adjustments to the ergonomics of any given rifle. And while it's not ideal, we would rather have something that fits us perfectly off of the get-go, or something that we can adjust to make it fit perfectly without adding temporary modifications if we were in a situation that we needed to make the most out of a given rifle or a given shot. By adding a little bit of buildup to the lower part of the palm swell, suddenly my grip finger is in a better position on the trigger. My cheek is slightly raised so that as I come into the rifle, I have a little bit better cheek and support for various positions, whether it's here or a kneeling shot. I can be in a better position with this system, even though it doesn't necessarily look pretty. Now I would want to adjust my weighting on my rifle to make sure that I have it loosely at the balance point of my system. So you can see the balance point on this rifle is just around the beginning of the third M-LOK slot. I prefer that to be slightly further rearward, right around the second M-LOK slot. So on most of my rifles, I will not run these external 2 weights. I'll just run the full gamut of internals. So we can use this weighting and balance to control not only how the rifle feels from a tripod, so it's very easy to manipulate left, right, up, and down, but it also won't fall forward. You can see here, if I let it go, it's starting to fall forward. That means that I have a little bit too much weight in the front. I'm gonna pull this rearward, lock it down, and you can see now it wants to balance right where it's supposed to, wherever I stop the rifle. If you know 80 to 90% of the time you'll be shooting it with a bipod attached, then set your rifle up with the bipod to ensure that every time you set up with it, it's going to react the same way. And in the event that you need to shoot without this attached due to an obstacle or other, you would also want to check how the gun balances and recoils without that extra weight. If you want to see any of the gear we're using here in this video, or any of the other products that MDT offers, check out mdttac.com for your next rifle.